And then I think I felt a bit lost. Like, how do you actually write a book? It felt like, again, like I'd obviously done it as a teenager, but that felt different. Like, I'll be transparent. I think it was like £4,000, which is a lot of money, and that was like my savings. And I just kind of felt like I've given this money, like I have to do it now. Yeah, I think like, you're right. I think it does start to feel more like a job. I think once you have a contract, from my perspective, it starts to feel more like a job. I think it's always more fun when you haven't got any expectation on you. I think once.
Nobody knows what you are.
I was concerned about going out into the world and doing something bigger than myself until someone smarter than myself made me realize there is nothing bigger than myself.
If you don't believe, nobody else is going to believe.
To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paper Trails podcast. I'm your host, Shamaki, also known as Sharks' Polaroid. And today I'm with a very special guest, incredible writer, I have to say. She goes by the name Sara Jafari. She is a British-Iranian writer whose work has been longlisted for Spread the World's Life Writing Prize and published in Galdem and a Good Journal. She is a contributor to I Will Not Be Erased and a romance anthology Who's Loving You. Sarah also runs Token magazine, which showcases writing and artwork by underrepresented writers and artists. And I wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
And I appreciate that because it was like a message, and you hadn't really seen any our stuff. We haven't posted for for quite some time, and obviously you were gracious enough to actually want to come on. And to be fair, I think the pleasure was mine because the book that we'll be discussing today is People Change, which was an incredible book, I have to say. But obviously, we'll talk about that later on. First, I just kind of wanted to know your, like, I guess, early introductions into sort of creativity. Like, what was the first kind of story that you heard that really inspired you, or the first film that you saw that made you go, "Oh wow, like this is amazing."
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I've mentioned it before, and it is a bit cringe, but I think it was Twilight, the film, that got me
Oh
into writing.
goodness.
I think it was mainly I enjoyed reading before then. Let me explain. I enjoyed reading before then, to an
Yeah,
extent. But I think when I saw the film, I was obviously very enamored with it. So then I read the
yeah,
books. I'd never been so into reading before when I'd read those series of books. Um, and I think it really like opened a gateway into like writing for me because then I kind of ended up writing like my own stories like off the back of that, and also reading more like fantasy romance as a result of it. So I think I know it's
which
not
which
very like.
which Twilight one was it? Was it the first one?
Yes, I saw the first one in the cinema, and then I ended up reading the rest of them like back to back
Okay,
very
yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
And I was
Wow.
very into it. It kind of opened the whole genre for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, no judgments here. Yeah, I mean, was it the way that like he kind of saved her from the car that was about to crash them that made you go, "Wow, this is something new. I've never seen this before."
Probably, probably. I think that I don't know. I think a lot of people were really into it. There was something about it. I think I
Yeah,
don't know what it was about Twilight that really worked for everyone. I think maybe the moodiness of it, maybe. Um,
probably that sort of teenage
yeah,
angst of it,
yeah,
kind of, it's very Tumblr. That's what it
very.
feels like.
And
It feels,
of
uh,
the Tumblr era as well when it came out.
yeah,
So
and for some reason, whenever I think of Twilight, I always think of like Wattpad. Did you
yeah,
have a Wattpad era as well?
I didn't have a Wattpad. I don't know. I had something. I don't actually know what it was called, but I did write like
Yeah.
Twilight fan fiction.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do think it was Wattpad. I don't know what it was. It was something, and I think it was really like niche website.
No,
I
that's
know
you
it's
know
not
what
where
that's
I was it.
no, no, no. You know what? On this podcast, we absolutely encourage honesty and some people being transparent. That's a great answer because obviously, I think that's the kind of thing with creativity and with stories, and I would say art in general. It's kind of a thing of because I tried to watch Twilight,
Mm.
and I went to see the second one in the cinema,
Mhm.
and I think I lasted about 15 minutes of it. But
Really?
then to know that obviously you were so inspired by it, you started writing, and I'm guessing you had T-shirts and posters on the wall.
I went and saw it in the cinema 3 times. Not
Free
once,
time, what,
not
to watch the
twice.
same one?
The same one, the first one, and each time was
Uh,
just as magical. Now I don't think I could watch it. I don't think I could watch it now. Well, no, I could watch it now, but
yeah, yeah,
I wouldn't
no,
do it now. I think it was of
yeah,
a
no, of course, it must have been really, just
time.
yeah, no, but it's kind of like it kind of brings me back to that point I was saying. It's kind of like how everyone kind of had pinpoints their own thing that really resonates with them and that makes them actually enjoy um, what they are seeing.
Mm,
Whether it is a movie or reading a book, and
mm,
it's kind of interesting in a sense how much um, like growing up, despite us not really knowing it, we actually kind of need art. And it's a
mm,
weird one because it's kind of like obviously you're taught you need shelter, food, water, all of this kind of thing. But then you see this craving that us as humans have for art, whether it's literature, whether it's thing. And it's kind of interesting. I just kind of wanted to know your thought on that. Like, what is it that kind of lures us towards it in
yeah,
a
it's
way?
art.
Because
Mm,
because it's kind of a bit sometimes like to someone where if they see like a painting on the wall and it's just a blob, like a red blob, they might be like, oh, it's a bit superficial. The artist might be like the red thing symbolizes life and eternity. But then someone be like, okay, yeah, sure. But then to someone else, they might be like, oh wow, this is everything. And I kind of wanted to, I guess, know more on your perspective of kind of what lures people towards art and creativity.
yeah, I think a lot of us are like drawn to like the arts because we can helps us like see ourselves and
Yeah,
also learn more about ourselves. And I guess that's like
yeah,
for reading specifically. I think that's what I think a lot of people get from it. Is like
yeah,
relating to characters, or I don't know, or escaping. Actually, so it's like completely different from real.
yeah,
I think. Whereas like with art, I'm not really like an artsy person. Like when
mm,
you said red blob, like I wouldn't get it either. But I
yeah,
imagine
yeah, yeah.
people work differently. That maybe they are more visual, and maybe they wouldn't as well to reading. But if they see something, it might I don't know conjure something
It
in them.
might, yeah, like some of the stuff that you see in Tate Modern, you're kind of
Mm,
like, oh, what does this mean? But then, you'll see a lot of people standing around there, but kind of crazy thing is everyone's getting a different meaning from it, which is
mm,
like the craziest thing. And sometimes it's different to even what the person that made it was probably
yeah,
thinking towards it, you know?
that's what makes it
Um,
interesting, isn't it? I guess
yeah,
once you put out something, it's not yours anymore, so everyone can
yeah.
interpret it, differently, which is
That's
quite
low-key
interesting.
amazing as well, though.
Yeah.
To especially if you have people like having discussions about it and all of that. Like for example, I mean, even like I said, for your book, the fact that it brought out so many questions that I even started looking at myself and my current situations and thinking about it in that way.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like it's crazy how much we seek art in a way, not
Mm.
just art in terms of like paintings, but like the whole thing in general.
Yeah, I think it's because we're trying to understand ourselves. I think personally, like it's such a weird. I think that the world is just weird. Like, why are we here? What are we doing? Because I feel like art is the way to understand it more and understand ourselves. I think as you get older
Yeah.
as well, you start to really like think life is weird. And
Mm.
you can get quite existential. So I think
No,
art.
yeah, of course you do. There's a certain part that just hits you where Instagram quotes kind of go from being a bit cringy to being like, oh, that's what that means, And and
Insightful.
it's yeah, yeah, you're like, oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't be an Instagram person, but like Instagram poster, uh, in terms of captions, but
Mm,
I do like them, you
yeah.
know. Um but to kind of go back to your obviously Twilight starting your one of creating fan fiction and this and that, how did you go from there to like kind of writing your first book,
Mm.
Mismatch?
Yeah, so I then wrote another book. In my teens, I actually wrote an actual book, like a full length.
Okay.
which kind of was, it had like elements of Twilight in it, but I think the
Yeah.
difference was that it, because I come from a Muslim background and I'm also
Yeah.
Iranian, and I lived in Hull for most of my life, which is like was very
Mm.
white at that time.
Yeah.
I kind of really wanted essentially like a British Iranian Muslim Twilight is what I really wanted. So that's kind of what I ended up
Okay.
writing,
Yeah.
and that was like my first foray into writing.
Yeah.
And then obviously I wrote a full length book, and then went to uni.
Can we hear like a little premise of the book, the first one? I'm kind of interested
It's
in a
funny.
cultural vampire.
Well, no, it's they were witches and wizards, so it wasn't like Harry Potter. It was like they were like
Yeah.
there was this like race of people that had magical powers,
Yeah.
essentially, and there was this
Yeah.
like British Indian Muslim girl who ended up falling in love with this new guy at school. Or, like she fancied. It was very Twilight. I'm pretty sure he saved her in a
Yeah.
car. It wasn't that different.
You put the car scene in there.
No, it was different because someone was going after her, and then he had to stop
Yeah.
it with his
Yeah.
powers. It was more of a car
Yeah.
accident crash thing.
Nah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like he's destined to be with her. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think he converts to Islam by the end or something. It's just very.
Oh. Yes. Yes. We love a bit of that.
That was obviously that book. Obviously, it went nowhere because it was
Yeah.
nothing. And then I went to uni and I wrote another novella, not with magic elements this time. And then when I graduated uni, I did have a few years where I wasn't writing really anything long. And I kind of guess I had a similar thing to the character in the first book, The Mismatch, where she kind of feels a bit lost in her 20s, like early 20s.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I think I just saw someone online had written and published a book, and it kind of made me think maybe I could do it. Like, I don't know why that
Yeah.
inspired me,
Yeah.
but I just
Yeah.
made it seem not that it was the most impossible thing.
Yeah.
And then I was
Like
like, actually,
it's attainable.
yeah, like I think before that
Yeah.
it seemed very impossible. Like, how would you get a book
Yeah.
published? It seemed just. I think this girl specifically was like kind of talking about the how to get published online quite openly.
Yeah.
So that made it
Because to be
seem
fair,
like,
getting published does feel like something that's like large, and like if
yeah,
you
not
if
impossible.
you do get published, then it's like, oh my god, how did this person do it? You
Yeah,
know, like you have to go through agents, and then they have to put your manuscript out, and then
yeah. There's
because
so
like I
many
said,
barriers, yeah, to get to it. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
like I said, there was a point where I wanted to also
Mm.
publish, but then it felt so daunting in a sense. And I think probably if I saw someone like that, then it probably
Mhm.
would have made me think, oh, you know what, actually it is quite attainable.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
sorry, go
definitely.
on. As you,
No, my
I
my
didn't mean
story.
to interrupt you.
And then at that point, I was working in a job, like an office job, at a romance publisher. And then I think I felt a bit lost. Like, how do you actually write a book? It felt like, again, like I'd obviously done it as a teenager, but that felt different. I don't know. Obviously, it was just kind of like, I guess it was more for pleasure, where I was taking it a bit more seriously this time. And I wanted to do a master's in creative writing, but my employer wouldn't let me do half a day less a week or a day less a week. So I ended up doing a Faber Academy course, which is it's quite costly, but it's like a 6 month course where it's basically the concept is you write a book in that 6 months. Is what they want you to
Okay, yeah,
do.
yeah,
So I ended up writing the majority of it during that period, the first draft of
yeah.
it. It was
Of
helpful.
which book? The mismatch.
Mismatch, yeah, the mismatch.
Okay, wow, yeah,
And then I think I spent like a year editing it after that. And then
yeah,
I think there was a lot of edits. So even though I've written in like 6 months, it
yeah,
just a lot of edits after that.
yeah.
But
No,
I've
of course.
answered your question. The reason I wrote it, the reason I wrote it, I think it was mainly because I didn't see myself in the books I was reading like at all.
Mm,
Growing up,
yeah,
like, even in adulthood, like I still don't see British Iranian books, even now being published. Like I
yeah,
don't, I know of a few, but there's not many. So I kind of felt like I wasn't really seeing myself in the books I was reading.
yeah,
And I just wanted to kind of put like some of my experiences into a book. So in the mismatch, you kind of get two perspectives. One is the character's mother Neda in 1970s Iran, and kind of it shows you kind of the Iranian Revolution and kind of her immigrating to the UK, and just kind of like her journey. And then you also see her daughter, who's like obviously a child of immigrants, and is kind of struggling with like religious guilt and kind of like doesn't know where she is in her 20s. So it kind of was like some of the things I was going through, and
Yeah.
I guess some of it was like my own family's like some of their big like history and details I kind of wanted to put into a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. And you actually wrote that the first part in 6 months. Like
Yeah.
as in from like sort of you had the beginning to the end written, even though it wasn't obviously edited or anything like, but you had the actual skeleton of the story done in six
Yeah, yeah,
months.
yeah.
That's actually incredible. How many pages was it?
So I think it's a. I mean, I've only got the mismatch with me, but I think it's a long book, you know.
Yeah.
Like
That's
four,
no, but that's
four-
actually pretty good in 6 months.
yeah, but I think if you think, I think I used to be like that. But I actually think if you write, I think I was writing like
Because
five.
the reason why I'm so like kind of so surprised by that is kind of like how did you continue like not continue writing, but with me like I always restart the first chapter 1,000 times.
Mm,
And then if I'm happy with it, then I'll write the second one. Then I might be like, oh, but this isn't, then I
yeah,
leave it for a while. Then I come back to it and I'm like, oh, the whole thing isn't good. Was it kind of because you paid, I guess, for the course and you kind of had to do it, that's why you kept going? Or was it kind of you was into it and you thought this is actually pretty good?
I think to be honest, I do think it was mainly the first thing that you said. I think it was
Yeah.
like I'll be transparent. I think it was like £4,000, which is a lot of money, and that was like my
Yeah.
savings. And I just kind of felt
Oh.
like I've given this money, like I have to do it now because it'd be
Yeah,
in
yeah.
my mind
Especially
it
if
was
it's
like
your savings. Yeah.
the thing. I feel like some people do courses and maybe they're already really rich, so it's kind of like oh whatever, like it's fun. I
Yeah.
was kind of like no, like I need to get this money back
This
sometime.
is everything. Yeah.
So I was like really wanted to take it seriously, and I was like I have to by the six
Yeah.
months. And I guess what's great about doing courses, like obviously there are cheaper courses, which I think I think people should do. I wouldn't necessarily recommend the one
Yeah.
that I did. But I think what was good about it is like there would be some weeks where some of us were like, oh, we don't know what we're doing anymore. Like we want to kind of
Mm.
start again, like you were saying. And you
Yeah.
would kind of be the one to be like, no, like you need to like just keep going with it. And
Yeah.
like I think personally, if you're like struggling with the issue that you had, it's just easier to just I guess force yourself to write. Don't look back, basically. Just keep writing,
Mm.
and then in 6 months, 7 months, you can go back and actually edit it. But like, I think you just need the story,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it
and like,
also
oh
makes it hard to kick it off if you have nothing there. Like,
yeah, and like
as
you
in,
can
if you're
normally
still on chapter one, then you're like, "Well, you can leave it longer off to you might come back for another 2 years because it's like, oh, I haven't done anything anyway."
yeah, and like if I think also giving yourself like deadlines. Like I would say when I was on the course, I have to write 5,000 words a week, and then obviously if you just count
Yeah.
those 5,000 words a week, it ends up being a book within
Dude,
6 months.
yeah. 5,000 words a week, yeah.
Well, now I don't know if I could do. Now I don't even work full time, and I think that feels like too much. But then I don't
Yeah.
know. It
But
felt like
then, yeah.
time.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know.
obviously, and that was your first book as well.
Mm.
Do you still feel like that kind of now, or do you feel like you have a more easier pattern in kind of doing your work?
I do
Like
feel
as a writer,
like
I was just going to say because as a writer, like, is it a thing where let's say a publishing house kind of says, okay, we want this how many books,
mm.
or is it you just decide when to do a book?
So how it works is so like for the first book I wrote, I had no deal. Like obviously, you don't have an agent at that point either. So when I ended up getting an agent and then getting a deal, I think they offered for one book, one publisher, another one offered for two. So I ended up asking my current publisher if they could offer for two because I kind of wanted the security of a two-book deal. So then that was like locked in. Where I am now is I have written the third book, a draft, and I don't have a deal. So I think my agent would have to go out. It's kind of
And
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll send it to my current publisher, but I guess it's a guarantee what the situation will be. And then I guess you might get a one book or a two-book deal from that. So it's kind of just I think it does vary. Some people end up
Does
getting another
depend, doesn't it?
without having to write the full book again. But I think what I'm writing the third in a different genre, and that's when things get a bit weird in publishing, where like
Yeah,
you can't really write like romance books and then say you want to do a thriller, and people be like, fine,
yeah.
that's fine. I think you'd have to write the thriller in full, for example, and then
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
make it again the same one. You'd have to go to a different one. They kind of put you in a box basically.
Yeah, no, because it kind of brings me up to like asking kind of again back towards like the sort of the whole art and the creativity aspect of it, because it's kind of like, let's say if you were given like a 5 year, like not 5 year, I mean like a free book deal where
Mm.
they want expect you to make 3 books. At one point, at what point does it kind of go from kind of doing it because you kind of like enjoy writing and telling stories to like, oh, this is a job where I have to just fill the words, and it kind of becomes not as enjoyable as it initially was. Like
Yeah.
I feel like, because if I was forced, okay, yeah, we want it by like, it's like, let's say it's February, they go, okay, we want it by December, then
Mm.
it's like, oh, then you know what I mean. It's just kind of like, how does creativity then flow when you're kind of in that state?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think it does start to feel more like a job. I think once you have a contract, from my
Yeah,
perspective, it
yeah,
starts to feel more like a job. I think it's always more fun when you haven't got any expectation on you. I think
yeah, yeah, yeah,
once they say that, like, yeah, they want it by this date, and you know people will read it, and you know you'll have like it gets a bit more like pressure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't really know what the solution to that is. I think you just need to like take your time with it, really. I think,
Mm,
or try not to think about what people think about it, because that's the
yeah,
best. The why writing is so amazing before you get any deals is because you are just writing for yourself and kind of like a story
yeah,
you want to write. I
yeah,
think when you start writing for someone, then it starts to become less fun. So I think you just need to kind of try and get it out of your head.
yeah. Just
Yeah,
to sort of just write something again that you'd want to either see or something that you'd want to read. Yeah, that's
yeah,
actually a great bit
yeah.
of advice.
But I think the
Yeah,
problem is with publishing, to be realistic, is
yeah,
especially when you have like a two-book deal for the second book, like they will steer you in a direction, so you don't have as much
mm,
creative like control
yeah.
as you did for
That's
the
what
first.
that's what I'm saying. I feel like it feels like when musicians have to make like an album or
Mm,
something, and then if they want to go completely different to their first one, then they're like, we don't really know. The audience knows you as this kind of brand. You know, if you're like
mm,
an emo rock band and you want to now do like pop, it's like, I don't know if that's gonna work. You know, you have to kind of do. Is it kind of? It
yeah,
was similar. It would be kind of similar to that.
very similar. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, very similar. And like, some people change their name for different books, so they'll have like a pseudonym. Like if they're
Oh,
writing like a different genre, they'll have
yeah.
to go with a pseudonym, so like they don't get their brands confused. People don't get
Oh,
them
that's actually
confused.
interesting. Yeah.
So I think
There's a whole different identity.
I think if you write literary fiction, it's a bit different. I think it's more like like genre fictions, like romance, thriller, crime,
Yeah.
what other what they're called. They're more like I think you have to like they have a brand. Whereas I think with literary fiction, you kind of cross into different things, like different, and I think that's fine. So I think it is more of a genre fiction.
Because obviously, I mean, that's kind of how it happens, especially with any creative. They kind of want to switch about, you know, they kind of want to write one day about, people with
Mm,
magical powers and, love and teenage love to, people change, you
yeah,
know, which is
exactly.
completely, yeah. But you know what? Like, that's what it is because uh, it it's kind of, I guess, there to allow that creative freedom. But
Mm,
my thing, the reason why I even brought it up is because it
mm,
kind of feels weird when you're controlled to do
mm,
something creative. Like I can't, like if I was, let's say, a painter and someone told me you have to paint something every month, I'll
mm,
just freak out. I wouldn't know what to do. I'll just be like, because now it feels like every idea has to be a good idea. You don't have that freedom to just kind of spend 6 months on an idea and then go, oh, okay, maybe I don't like this, and then
yeah.
um, but no, that's really interesting because, like I said, we've got another writer as well in the group, and
Mm.
obviously myself that has been trying to uh, get into it, and I sort of was it because of the what's it called, the course that you were able to get published, or did you still have to find an agent afterwards?
Yes, I still had to find an agent afterwards. So kind of the journey with that was, I
Yeah.
think I was actually quite lucky with that. I mean, I will caveat by saying that weird book that I wrote when I was a teenager. I did try and send it to agents when I was at uni, and obviously I did not get
Yeah.
far with that. So I was kind of well aware that it was cold out there. Like it wasn't going to be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So with the course, they
But
had like
what did they do? Did they just send you an email back, or did they send the manuscript back, or you just hear nothing?
so when I did the first book I ever wrote, you had to send the manuscript in paper form via
Yeah.
and send it in the
Oof.
post. So you
Yeah.
just get it back to you in the post with maybe like a slip
Okay.
being like yeah, thanks type thing.
Yeah.
So that I think that was a different time though. That was like 2013 or something. So that
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
for the mismatch, which actually came out. At the end of the course, they had like an open day where like editors and agents would come and you'd read out an excerpt from your book, and
Yeah.
it was kind of like it was quite a big deal in the course because
Yeah.
there were rumors of like some big agents coming, and then they'd like offer representation to people.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I think everyone kind of, it was quite like a hyped moment where you'd kind of think, oh,
Yeah.
what happened during this like thing. I mean, the reality is like not a lot really happened. But like some agents did, some agents did speak to us, and one did speak to me and said like she'd like kind of like she'd like to see the book when it's like ready. So I ended up sending it to her, and I think I sent it to like maybe 15 other agents. Um, and obviously I got a few rejections. The first agent from the open day read it and said she'd like to basically represent me type thing. And then I told
Okay.
the others, and then I got two others that offered, so I had three in the end. But when they kind of reject you, like some of them give reasons, the majority don't. They just kind of say like not for me.
Yeah.
So obviously it can be quite hard if you don't get any offers to know kind of what would be like what's working and what's not. I guess it's just because agents are so busy, it's
Yeah.
quite hard for them to give feedback. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, then I had to like decide between three. I think it was quite an easy decision in the end. Like once you chat with people, you realize like whose vision is
Mm.
the same as yours and things like that.
Yeah. Like who actually cares about this book and is actually willing to push it out there.
Yeah, and I think even beyond that, I think something that I wish I had this learned advice I would give to authors who are just like thinking about going with agents is also to like just ask them how they would position your book and like where do they see it in like a bookshop, for example. Because my
Okay.
book,
Yeah.
like my book, I think it could go in many directions. Any book can really, but I think if you're more like crossover, like I think some of the agents had visions like to make it be like really romance, and some had it kind of visions to make it more literary, or like I think
Mm.
finding out how what they think about the book in terms of like how they
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's quite important because then when they present it to the publisher, that's how the publisher will see it. So it all kind of
See.
stems
Yeah.
basically. I think it's important to
Ah,
find
that's
out.
actually a really good point.
Mm,
Because then that kind of makes it easy as well for the publisher to know where to kind of put the book as well, rather
yeah,
than them also having to try and figure out, oh, is this, is it that?
the agent will usually send like a kind of like a blurb to the editors, and they'll have like a one-line pitch. So they'll say it's like a rom-com, and they'll use like comparison titles. They might say it's like Twilight meets
Yeah,
I don't know another. And I guess from there, that's how the publishers will see the book. Like they're going to see
yeah.
that, and they'll say, "This is what the book is." I think it is quite important to be kind of on the same page with
Ah.
that.
You know what? I'm definitely going to be reading Mismatch after this, especially after reading your incredible book, People Change, which I really want to get into because, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I mean that because
Mm.
it's been a while since I've actually read a book. We had a big hiatus from this podcast. Friends decided to get married and all that boring stuff, so things had to be put on hold.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been a long time since I read it, and then this was so easy for me to get back
Mm.
into that. It didn't feel like a chore at all, and it felt like a mix between sort of like, well, for me, like Fleabag and
Ah, I've not seen
Normal
Fleabag.
People.
I need to see it.
I don't. Have you seen it? Or did you say you haven't? No.
No,
Oh my
no.
gosh! Yeah, you should definitely see it. You should definitely see. I think you would really enjoy it. Um, because essentially it is about a girl that lives in London, very quirky as well. And it's lighthearted, it's funny, it's great storytelling as well. And Normal People, have you seen Normal People?
Yeah, I like normal
Yeah, Normal
people.
People was
Yeah.
also elite, so it was kind of like that. That's what I think that blend as well really amped it for me. Um,
Mm,
and it felt really like felt like a really refreshing book in the sense of it wasn't, from what I read before, like the sort of cliche romance. It felt very modern. It felt
mm,
like it felt different. It felt like it was um, something that wasn't too forced upon you, even though a lot of it is between the two characters and how they
mm,
feel towards each other. It wasn't necessarily that was the thing that was in your face all the time. Like, this is a romance. Look how lovey dovey it can get. It was like real, and it was something that a lot of people could obviously relate to. So that's how I would,
mm,
I guess, describe the book. I just wanted to know
mm.
from your own words how you would describe your book.
Yeah, I think you described it really well. In terms of how I would describe it, I think essentially it's a story about a girl called Shireen who is trying to kind of, I guess she's in her like late 20s, and she's kind of in her dream job, and well, her dream job, she thinks it's her dream job. And it's all about kind
Yeah,
of like recalibrating what you thought your dream was in your when you were a teenager, like what you thought would make you happy in your 20s to actually what makes you happy.
yeah,
Um, and I guess it's also about kind of like how like I guess past traumas can really like affect us in adulthood as well. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I think it is like it has kind of like a romance thread throughout. I think a lot of it is about finding yourself and
yeah.
yeah, things like that.
Yeah, that because like I
Mm,
like I said before as well, like before we jumped on, it also had that sort of how I met your mother feel.
mm,
Um, for me, in the sense of like, because a lot of them are kind of going into like they start off in their late 20s and they're just going through that transitional period into, I guess, what people would say adulthood.
mm,
Um, and them just trying to figure themselves out. And there's one part in it where one of the characters, Lily, she as a kid
mm,
um wanted to be an artist.
mm.
Like that was her dream, like
Oh yeah.
job that she wanted to become. But then eventually she settled for being a teacher.
Mm,
Um and it's kind of like that. It was kind of like that we might not necessarily always get to the point that we always thought we would when we were younger. And in life, it happens that you might have to settle for something else. And that kind of realization in that moment of, okay, cool, this is where everything is for me right now.
yeah.
And again, the reason why I said how my mother is also the similarities in terms of he always speaks from the past tense. Everything that you're being shown is from what happened before in his life. Um,
Mm,
and in your book, you like beautifully done it in a way where you go from the present and then where little, you're teasing us with like these little words and little things of like how she's feeling, but not fully conveying it. And then you kind of go back to the past and then you slowly show us more and more of why she's
mm,
feeling like this. And
mm,
like you said, a lot of how the past actually affects our future, um, which is something you don't realize until you get older, which is the craziest part because you
yeah.
never kind of know as a kid that what you're going through. You just think you're just a kid, but you don't know what you're going through is going to ultimately shape up of when you finally have a bigger picture of where you are and who you are as a person.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, like I said, it was incredible the way you're able to kind of sift through the past and the present. And but before we get into that, I wanted to know, how did the idea for this book come about?
yeah. It was quite a hard one. Like I think with the first book it came very naturally. I think there is like a thing called second book syndrome where like the ideas
Yeah,
weren't really coming. And I was meant to
yeah.
write a different book which was like nothing to do with this. And then I ended up writing the very last chapter of this People Change. I wrote that, just that
Okay.
was the first chapter I'd written. We obviously
Yeah.
won't give it away, but it's just like a party scene basically. Um, and I
Yeah.
didn't actually know why there were. I don't want to give it away, but essentially, like there was like a tension in the story, and I didn't know why there was a tension.
Yeah.
Like when I wrote it, I was like, I don't know what's happened between them, but something's happened.
Yeah. Stuff is
So
happening.
I sent that to my publisher. Yeah, something's going on. And I was like, I actually don't know what's happened between them. I need to figure that out. I ended up sending that to my publishers that chapter, and I guess a rough idea, and they were quite keen on that. So I actually ended up rerouting to that. But I think at the time I was working in publishing, so I was working.
Mm,
I worked in publishing for most of my 20s. And I wrote the book during the pandemic, so I think everything was quite heightened in the pandemic. Like, and I
yeah.
guess like microaggressions in publishing are just it's everywhere. Well, I guess it's everywhere in the workplace, but in publishing it feels quite. I think in publishing it feels quite wrong because I guess you wouldn't think it. Like in publishing it, everyone feels very like liberal and like kind of like I don't know, like they shouldn't be saying the things that they say. So I feel like that
Yeah.
can be quite jarring sometimes.
Yeah, no, because I wanted
And the
to
conversation
obviously
about
even
diversity.
ask you that.
Mm,
Yeah, no, sorry.
ask me about.
The yeah, about the whole microaggression thing and the interesting kind of thing that obviously you highlight in the book as well about the whole, diversity and the speak up and the tweet that I sent you that was kind of we're looking
Mm,
for diverse authors, we're looking for these like and I was just kind of thinking I don't really see that in other job mediums or like other job places where it's such a big like where they're openly asking for more representation. Um and I kind of wanted to talk
mm,
a bit more about those microaggressions that actually occur in the publishing houses.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I guess like in the book you do see basically the character Shireen works in publishing and she's facing the microaggressions like you were saying. But I guess in publishing, I think it is like any workplace, but I guess it's quite frustrating because like you were saying with the tweet, there is a lot of they always say they want to hire more diversely and be more inclusive, but I feel like the turnover of staff firstly is quite poor. Like these people who are like diverse, like they end up leaving because it's actually not that great of an environment to work in. So they just keep like I
Okay,
guess
yeah,
like it's always like kind of bottom staff. They keep getting new ones
yeah.
in, and I don't know. I just I see through the years, like myself included, that we all end up leaving for various reasons. Not
Well,
necessarily
is it
because the
kind of like
environment is bad,
being
but I think
undermined, or is it
mm,
like
like
what
the
kind of like
microaggression.
what kind? Yeah, or is it just like
Mm,
everyday microaggressions
like how
that build up?
I think it's small things that do build up, or like sometimes it's big things. But like you'll see in the book, like some
Mm,
of the things in the book are kind of things that happen to either me or like, or maybe like colleagues or like not colleagues or like, because I obviously know loads of people at different publishing houses. Like you hear things have
yeah,
happened, so like maybe people get you mixed up a lot and you're literally two different races. That can happen quite a lot, and it's like, why is this happening? Or like you might be expected to kind of just do more. They ask you to look and find more like diverse authors, or you kind of get more of the burden of trying to like make them more inclusive without any pay,
yeah,
without anything, just because you're like one of few ethnic minorities in the team. Or I
yeah,
don't know. I just think yeah, it's just loads of little things, and obviously they are microaggressions. They are small, but they can
mm.
build over time, and it can be quite
Yeah. Now, of
frustrating.
course,
But I mean, I do
you
think in
kind of
my
get that
jobs,
sense.
I've been quite lucky. Yeah.
Oh no, no, no. Sorry, sorry. Continue.
I was just gonna say, I think the video went a bit off. But I was
Yeah,
gonna say, just in my job, I think I've been quite lucky. I've not had it too hard, but I guess, yeah, I think just from things I've heard as well, it can be
yeah,
quite rough out
yeah.
there.
No, because it's actually interesting because it's like I guess you feel it because you kind of know that you're like being used as a
Mm,
token or like someone
mm,
that's here to sort of like fill a quota and coming in with that kind of premise
yeah,
you're just kind of like oh this is a bit am I is this on merit or is this on you know and like even when it comes I
mm,
think sometimes there was people that was having there was like a discussion on Twitter about um like publishers the way the edits of the covers of the books that they put out that if
mm,
it's like an ethnic author or black
mm,
author where I don't know they kind of showed it was like four different pictures and all the books kind of looked the same even though it was about completely different things where it was like this sort of minimal design of like maybe lines and like a bright purple or
yeah,
something. And I was kind of looking through it and I was like oh wow this is quite a similar that it's just like, oh, it's this person's
Mhm.
book, let's just put it in this kind of thing. And I wanted to know like a bit more, but does that actually happen? Or is it like a very common thing where they kind of make all the, I guess, minorities books all kind of look the same?
I don't think it's. I mean, I don't know necessarily from working in publishing. I don't think the publishers I worked in did that necessarily because I worked in
Yeah,
children's. So I think they were quite different generally. I guess my
yeah.
observation of publishing is they often mimic other covers that are doing well. So like, I don't know if
Okay,
you've seen
yeah.
like The Vanishing Half. It's called by Britt Bennett. I feel like
Nah.
that's quite an abstract cover. And I think that book did quite well. So then I think other publishers might copy it for other books by like black authors, for example. And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it is mimicking other covers that have done well. Or as you were saying, it might be that
Mm,
they just don't know how to accurately like portray the cover, so they're just doing like
yeah.
abstract like lines
Yeah,
and
yeah,
things.
that's what
Sometimes
I'm
it's
saying.
quite
It's yeah. Because the pictures I
not
saw were
great.
so similar that you'd almost think it was one person's book, but just different variations of it.
Mm.
And I think the quote
It
tweet
is
that
really
was
weird.
around it was like, oh no, so I was just gonna say that again. The quote tweet around it was like, oh, the amount of times that I haven't picked up these kind of books, but probably missed out on great stories because
Mm.
of, I guess, how they have been published.
Yeah, it's such a shame. I think the package is so important, and I guess also like if you think about
Yeah.
it, if like the publisher's not very diverse in their workforce,
Mm,
I mean that obviously trickles into design as well. So like who is designing the
yeah.
books? They could be so different from the culture
Ah,
of the author.
that's a
Like
that's a great point.
get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, cause I guess it's just not just editors. I always think oh, it's just editors, but it's not just editors. It's like the whole
The whole
workforce
thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
should be.
yeah. That's a good point actually, because it could
Yeah.
come into the hand of someone that actually doesn't know how to put this thing up. And then, like you said, they probably just saw
Mm.
how someone else's worked and thought, you know what, let's just put it the same way, and hopefully no one notices.
But I do think there is a logic from their perspective because I remember I saw also a tweet and it I think it might have been a similar one, but they were saying the reason that they make covers so similar is that like if you liked this book with the abstract cover, you'll just buy the other one because you're like, oh, I liked that one and they look so similar, so you'll end up just picking them up.
Yeah.
So I guess that's their logic of it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
If it's
yeah. It's more
similar,
of a
you'll just end up
consumer-based thing.
already buy it. I think
Yeah,
that's what it is. But I think there's probably more to it. I'm just not sure.
yeah. No, no, of course, that 100% has to be. And I think sometimes, to be fair, though, it is kind of an interesting thing of how would someone publish it. Like, if they ask me, for example, how do you want your cover to look like? I probably wouldn't have the
Mm,
slightest clue of how I'd want it to be. I might have some idea, but it would be like, for example, like for me, if I was in a library, I'll probably pick up something that was just black, nothing on there, just
really?
straight, just black. Yeah. I'll just be like, what is this? And then I'll like, kind of maybe
So
read the
you're
blurb. I see. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so you're more interested in kind of like you don't want to be told what it is on the cover. You just feel like,
Yeah, in a way, because it's kind of like it. It might be bad, but like I kind of have a set of different genres. Like for example, if it's like a kind of wizarding kind of thing with superpowers, I'm kind of like,
mm,
I've got Harry Potter for that. Another like
mm,
medieval kind of one, I've got Lord of the Rings for that. But then it might just be a
mm,
case of like finding a whole different genre that, you know. And
mm,
then if the book is just straight black, no blurb, nothing, and then it's just a bit of an introduction, maybe obviously just to give a little synopsis of what it's about, then
mm.
I'll be like, okay, you know what, this might be interesting. Because now kind of thinking about it, a lot
Ah, it's
of the
interesting.
similar books do kind of look the same in a way,
Mm.
you know.
Oh wow.
Because I've been to like that. There's a place in Marylebone called Daunt. I think that's how you say it, Daunt Books.
Yeah,
And
I don't book. Yeah.
like you can kind of see all the medieval ones kind of look the same. They'll have a sword in it, maybe a rose,
Mm.
maybe a bit of armor, and then you're like, okay, cool. I know this is going to be about that, but then it's kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
is there something a bit different? Yeah.
Mm.
Um.
That's so interesting.
I
I think
also
people are just different, I guess, because I think. Oh, sorry. I thought my
no, no, no,
internet's
no.
a bit weird, but I was gonna say I think people are some readers weirdly, or not weirdly, but like conversely, really like the fact that some books just look similar. So like they like that they know they're getting their medieval sword
Yeah,
soldier.
yeah, yeah. I feel like
Because I
for the
used to work.
majority of
I used to
people,
work.
that'll be okay.
Yeah, and I used to work at like Mills and Boon, which is a romance publisher. Like, and they publish so many books, like 40 a month or something. And a lot of their
Yeah. Oh
covers were
wow.
quite similar. And I think like there's just certain cues that readers will like see. So maybe if they see like I don't know, like a corset for a Regency, they'll like pick it up because like, oh, I like historical books. So maybe for some people, it's a plus, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, 100%. I think that's what I'm saying. Like even for me, that's because if I was to put a book out and like I said, that's I wouldn't know where to even go with the design, and I feel like I don't know that would just maybe create mystery, but then again, probably someone wiser than me, someone such as yourself, will probably be like, yeah, a lot of people might not even touch this because they do want to kind of know what it is that they want to read.
Yeah.
Um, and I also kind of wanted to, so I just kind of wanted to also bring it back to the book. The main character. All right, let me just give a quick premise actually as well for people that haven't or don't know about the book. It's essentially about the main character called Shirin. It's Shirin, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And she's moved from Hull to London to work as a publisher. Essentially having her dream job in air quotes.
Mm.
Um, and then she kind of realizes that not everything is as smooth sailing as she thought things would be. And in the middle of all of that, she meets someone of her past. Is it Kian or Kian or is it
Yeah.
are they both wrong?
It's Kian.
Kian.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Kian, who's also Iranian, from her hometown in Hull, which she was surprised to see because they stopped talking after 10 years. So then now it's kind of her navigating through that and all the past feelings that she bottled up, kind of coming out again through seeing him, as well as all the microaggressions and the problems that's going on in her current life. Um, I wanted to kind of know because obviously you're from Hull.
Mm.
Um, were the because she experiences a lot of racism back home. Was in Hull was it same for you, or was it kind of like how much of it was kind of based around you, or was it a lot just like kind of loosely based off of your life?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, is fiction. So a lot of it was like very loosely based on my own life.
Yeah,
But there definitely was a lot of racism in Hull when I was there.
yeah,
Like I was saying to you before, it was like then it was very kind of white, especially at school. I think I was like one of like three people of color in all the school. So
yeah,
I think people were quite. There was a lot of very racist people, basically. Not to the extent that you see in the book, to me
yeah,
personally, but it wasn't like off the realm of
yeah, yeah,
it wasn't like this
yeah,
definitely would happen. Um, I
yeah.
think
It wasn't like a stretch.
no, no, and I think it is kind of like these
Yeah,
smaller cities that are very like kind of not very diverse. That is kind of like the consequence of it. I think, especially in the time period, because I think it is like when is it like 2018 or 2017 in the books? I think
yeah,
yeah, things felt quite dire then. So that was kind of like how it was.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And one thing that was very funny as well and very relatable
Mm.
was that her and her colleague at the publisher, who's also ethnic,
Mm.
have that thing where they go, "Oh yeah, you have that. You put on that posh white voice."
Mm.
I was gonna say, do you have one, or are you pretty good with the voice you have now?
I do have one actually. I think I had to do like a video for like a
Are,
publishing thing.
are we able to hear it?
It's not that dramatic, but it's definitely not my normal voice. I feel like it's just a bit posher. But no, you can't hear it. But yeah, I do have a posher voice. But then I think a lot of people do. I feel like I've spoken to other people and they all put on like a bit of a voice.
So talking about the book,
Mm,
um, now of course I wanted to kind of bring up essentially the main premise because it was all about. Actually, I just remember we were talking about Hole
mm,
and sort of the racism kind of there, and I wanted to kind of talk about the premise of the book, the title of the book, People Change.
mm,
Um, Now, of course, not to spoil anything, a lot of it is some racist stuff that uh, the main character Shirin has experienced 10 years ago from the hands of a certain person that she was, I guess, traumatized by,
mm,
um, called Rob Grayson. And uh, I'm just trying to tiptoe around it because I'm kind of like, is that chat kind of important? But she's speaking to her friend
mm,
and she's telling her about what he did, all those years ago and this and that. And her friend who's British and now white, she kind of doesn't really understand the depth of it. Um and she says about the guy, oh, like this happened 10 years ago, just to like move on.
mm,
Like he's changed now. And I kind of wanted to bring that up in terms of like to play sort of, I guess, the devil's advocate in at is there a certain time where you can forgive,
mm,
or is it like kind of that school bullying and racism and the trauma that was inflicted upon you to, because she does kind of make a fair point in terms of holding on to that will only hurt you more,
mm,
but also on the other side letting go of it, like how long would you say is a healthy amount to kind of hold on to trauma that you've experienced in the past, like at the hands of racism
I
specifically?
guess. I think. Yeah, I think it depends because I guess in the book, the Rob character he hasn't changed. I guess is the point is that like
Yeah,
her friend is sex. I guess for people that haven't read it, Shirin, the main character, there's someone from her past at school who bullied her quite badly. Well, he was
yeah,
part of the bullying group. He now is a comedian and he's doing amazingly, and he's continuing making like racist jokes.
yeah,
Um, but because they're jokes, everyone's kind of like not really taking it that seriously.
yeah,
I guess the difference is with this is that while her friend who is white and British kind of she thinks he's changed now, like he's a comedian, like he's not being a bully anymore. She's not seeing that
yeah.
the jokes actually are racist and damaging in another way.
Okay,
I
yeah,
guess kind of in the book, the main character, like he hasn't changed, he's just the same, but this time he's now famous with an
mm,
amazing book deal. And he's just encouraging other people to be racist and make racist jokes. So I
yeah.
guess from like her perspective, it's hard to move on when the person is
Because
not
it's
changed.
kind of still happening. Yeah,
Yeah, but I guess like generally speaking, I think it's healthy to let go of things that hurt you. But I
mm,
guess like, and I guess, but I think the character isn't very healthy in her approach to things either. So I
yeah,
don't think.
yeah. No, of course. Because I mean, there's obviously even another. Because I mean, it kind of does bring up that point of that she struggles with certain friends of hers because they don't understand, I guess, the gravity of what the bullying felt like.
Mm,
Because although they were their friends, they never really received that level of, hurt or trauma or bullying that she did. So it's kind of, I guess, in a way, she's not seeing it as that deep
mm,
because it hasn't scarred her, whereas it scarred the main character, obviously. And
yeah.
there's also like another character in there that isn't a comedian, but she also remembers him as someone that was also part of that kind of group, and she kind of holds on to, I
Mm,
guess, I don't know, I wouldn't say the venom, but the kind of what's it called, that hate.
mm.
Um, and I wanted to ask, essentially, can people truly change?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I think they can change, and I think they can change. I think you are quite different to how you were at school. Well, you
Mm,
should be. Um, but I think you can go in two directions. Either you can change as in like you'll become even worse than you were in certain views, kind of like this
yeah,
character, Rob. I think in the book he seems quite. He's kind of just a jokester in the school. He isn't necessarily the instigator of everything bad that happens. He's just kind of
yeah,
like joining in. So I think he takes it kind of too far in the sense that he starts like spewing hate online, and he's
yeah,
changed in that way that like he's now become like the main issue.
yeah.
Whereas I think some people change for the better. I think you definitely, basically, yeah, I think you can change. Um,
Mm,
but I think it's not a given that you'll change. I think you've got to work to change, or like maybe change your
yeah.
environment and see other
Because it's a
cultures.
very normal thing, especially with like now in cancel culture. It's kind
Mm,
of like sometimes a tweet that you put out like 2012 would could
mm,
sometimes be a career-ending thing, and and the person might be like, "Oh, I've changed from that," but then again, people aren't necessarily able to accept that.
mm,
And it's kind of a case of like, at what point is it actions that make people go, "Okay, you know what, this person's changed," or
mm.
is it kind of like just understanding, okay, it was a long time ago? Like, where does is there a way to come back from the cancel realm in people's eyes? Like, once you get put in that shadow realm of you're cancelled, is there is there a way to, you know, come
Mm.
back from that?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like yes. I think within the time, probably. I think it's hard
Mm,
when, like you were saying, if right now someone saw a tweet from someone 10 years ago
yeah,
and then they were cancelled for that. That's just a bit. That's a bit.
yeah, and
It's hard then
yeah,
because yeah, they're not doing it
because
now.
it happens a lot. It happens a lot. To be fair, I mean, people like that's how Kevin Hart lost his Oscars thing when he was about to host it. Well, he
Oh,
didn't lose it. He stepped down from it because people wanted him to apologize for like some homophobic comments.
mm,
Um, and he said that he has been doing it. He has been apologizing. He's
yeah,
apologized enough before, and he said, "I don't want to basically kind of do it." So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. It's a interesting case how you basically kind of put that in the book in terms of the
mm.
fine line between freedom of speech and the line where you're crossing between actually offending someone.
Yeah, and I
Because that's what a lot of people do. They just hide behind that umbrella of it's freedom of speech, but you've just
mm.
disrespected someone's whole, person.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's really damaging as well because it's like with like the whole comedian kind of route, he thinks it's like a joke. People are laughing. He's not
Yeah,
taking it seriously, but it is because people take all that. The people take what you say in and they start to just believe it. I think that's
yeah,
the issue. Is like people are sponges, whether we like it or not. Like
yeah,
when you look up to says something enough times, you're going to start to believe it. Sadly, I
yeah.
think
Of
it's
course,
like
especially if they say it in a jokey way, then
yeah,
that whole thing becomes less like important. Not important, but like it loses its kind of gravity
mm,
because it's like been made light of by the
exactly.
comedian.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting one though because it's one that I'm doing the US edits for this book. 'Cause it's coming out in the
Mm,
US next year,
yeah,
and doing edits on it. It's going to be different, and it's made me think about the characters, like the three
yeah,
bullies, and maybe I'm being a bit harsh to them in the book. I don't know. Like there's one of them that oh God, I can't even remember his name myself, but it's not Rob, and it's not the one that's like really a bully. It's kind of the one that's
the
the third.
Owen.
Yeah, I can't even remember his name myself, but
I think it was Owen.
I don't think it was Owen because I don't
Imagine if I've just made
quite
up
right.
a name.
It's not a name. I feel like I'd make a character. Is it Tom?
It might be.
Oh, he's very minor. Like he's so minor. Me as
Yeah.
the author, I've forgotten about him. But he essentially just follows.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's fair that she's also against him, but I guess it's like in your
I
trauma.
think you talk about the guy that she sees at the party.
Yes, there's the guy that she sees. It's they're at like the New Year's Eve club,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she sees him, and he's kind of like doesn't
yeah.
realize anything that they've got any
Yeah,
beef.
that's who I was talking about before in terms of can people actually
Oh,
change?
I thought you
but
were
I
talking
kind of
about
forgot his
Rob,
name.
the
No,
main
no, no, no.
guy.
It was him.
Oh, I
It was
see.
the yeah,
Well,
because
these
he kind of
yeah,
like you said, he was kind of following the pack, but she brushed them all kind of the in the same light.
yeah,
And for the Rob one, it makes sense, but for him, it's kind of like, you know, can you accept he's changed or you know?
yeah. Well, I guess with him, he's not. I guess I think as a reader, you can get he's changed, he's different. But I guess if you're the
Yeah,
character that's been her, he's never said to her like
I'm
apologize.
sorry. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not even acknowledged it. Everyone just says, "Oh, well, it's 10 years, he's changed." But I guess you'll find out in the book the repercussions of the things that they did were
Mm,
quite life changing for these characters. So like, I don't think
yeah,
saying nothing is enough sometimes. But I think like objectively, yes, people can change
yeah.
for that guy
That's a
anyway.
nice way of It's a nice way of putting it. No, but to finally kind of talk about on the book before we wrap up, the last few points was kind of like I really appreciated how much culture you put in there,
Mm,
how much religion as well that you put in there, because for me, especially from what I've read, it's
mm,
like I haven't read a book where Islam is used as the sign of positivity, as in they're using Islam for good,
mm,
rather than just the thing that's kind of out there in the book, like
mm.
the Kian,
Yeah,
Kian, yeah,
Clean.
as in like him, like his brother become a Muslim, and that's
Mm,
portrayed as that was what made him feel better.
mm,
The main character Shirin, when she comes back to like trying to be, I guess, more involved in her religion, that she starts to find the peace. I found
mm.
that really refreshing, if I'm honest, because it's
Oh,
kind of like Islam is used as a token, but it's never
mhm,
kind of used as the the thing that actually helps characters,
mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was going to say, how in touch would you say you are with your Iranian culture?
Yeah, with my Iranian culture, don't think a great deal. Like, I don't think I'm massively in touch with it. I think sadly, I
Mm,
feel like I don't know. I feel like when we moved to Hull, there wasn't really an Iranian culture. Like, there wasn't like
yeah,
a community there, and I was there for 16 years. So I think my family never really like they didn't know that many Iranians. Like, we weren't really involved in much.
yeah,
I kind of feel like it's like sometimes it happens with immigrants where they kind of just want you to like I guess adopt English culture, but also not do
mm,
certain English things. It's kind of like a weird
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
So I
Like
do,
in between.
yes, I kind of feel like a bit
Yeah,
like I don't know that much, but I try to bring it more out in my writing.
yeah,
I think you'd see in the mismatch, it's half of it's set in Iran, so you get more of the Iranian culture. So I feel like I'm learning it now
yeah,
as I'm growing up. But yeah, I'm glad you said about the thing about kind of using or the characters using Islam to kind of find peace because that's something that I've definitely found like with like my Muslim friends, like when I spend time with them or like when like I find comfort in that. So I kind of wanted to show that in the book as
yeah,
well. Like, this character,
yeah.
she has so many
Especially with
different friends.
Miriam.
Yeah, with Mariam, yes,
Yeah,
she kind
Miriam.
of brings her comfort. So I kind of wanted to show that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that like I said, that was really refreshing to see because it
Mm,
wasn't like I mean, obviously, I wasn't expecting you to use it negatively, but it
mm,
wasn't also like brushed aside because obviously, if you're Iranian, you can assume they're also Muslim.
mm,
But it was the fact that it was brought to the forefront of a positive change
mm,
of like Miriam or like Mariam being a positive person in her life, actually helping out when her and her friend. And like I said, that was a lot of it in this book was refreshing.
yeah.
It was so well put together, so many like different things. But before I kind of round up on the book, I just want to know that you said there's a obviously her grandma is called Mama. Is it Bozorog? Did
It's
I
Mom.
butcher it?
It's Mom on
Oh,
Buzug. Mom
huh?
on Buzug. Can you hear me? It's
Yeah,
Mom.
no, I've
Not
yeah,
having it. So it's essentially Momon means mum.
yeah.
Buzug means big in Farsi. So it's kind
Bozorog.
of like big
Oh,
mum,
okay, yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Um,
I'm so sorry, I butchered that then.
no, no, it's a hard
Oh
one.
my god. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my. The whole time I was reading, I was like Bozorog, and I was like,
You said
yeah.
it pretty right, but
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, then I don't feel as bad. I knew I was right the whole time. Um, but no, like I said, it's an incredible book. So many different things that are weaved in together. The London life, also the beginning parts about gentrification was amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, had that fine balance between having the estates right next to these new kind of coffee shops
Mm.
and whatnot, and how she feels guilty but actually likes them being there.
A lot of people say they relate to that, and I'm like, okay, so
I relate to that as well. In a bad way. I don't know if I should, but I was like, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But no, it's a beautifully written book. From start to finish. A very easy read, not in the sense that it's simplistic, but because of how well it flowed, between everything, between her life in London, her culture back home, her religion, her past, her present, her future, everything. So, and I really, really recommend everyone grab this book and read it. It's amazing, and you did a really, really great job. I'm happy to be able to speak to you as a fan now. I've I've become a fan over the few weeks. But I just wanted to round up by saying that obviously you started Token Magazine.
Mm.
I just kind of wanted to know a bit more of that.
Yeah, sure. Um, so this was I started Token magazine in like 2017. And at that point, I think in publishing they were speaking a lot about being more diverse, like even more than they were now. But I think then
Yeah,
action wasn't being made at all. Like at least now, I think you can definitely see things are happening. Um,
yeah,
I felt quite frustrated with it, and I also couldn't get. I was trying to get a publishing job, and I was kind of struggling. So I just decided to create my own like magazine,
yeah,
kind of independently, and see what happens. But I did like the first open call for submissions for like writing by underrepresented writers and artists, and I got so many submissions, so it was really kind of
yeah,
positive. Yeah, since then we've been doing like one issue a year, and it's just kind of like different themes, but essentially it's a magazine that showcases writing and artwork by underrepresented writers and artists. And usually it tends to be kind of newer writers and artists who are kind of starting
yeah,
out in their career and kind of just to showcase their work and kind of just, I guess as well, like, I don't know, I think a lot of the time, like we were saying, it's really hard to break into the industry. So just having like something that's a bit more DIY,
yeah.
and people can get like direct feedback on their work and things like that, I think can be quite helpful.
No, that's amazing. Yeah,
Mm.
especially for someone that's trying to figure out how to even get involved in this. It's a nice little
Mm,
way of getting involved, and easier way than the whole daunting experience by doing it through other means, and a publishing place that actually appreciates
mm,
that kind of work.
yeah.
And is there anything recent that you've got going on? Because I know you said that you finished the draft on your book, the latest book. Uh,
Yeah, I
any
think it's very to be confirmed. I don't know if
Yeah.
but so there's nothing upcoming that's happening. But I guess,
Yeah.
but if you have any American listeners, People Change will be out next year under a different title.
Yeah, just quickly, how comes you have to change it for Americans?
I think this happens quite often, but essentially they want to make it work more for their market. So like there were just certain things that I think American readers would appreciate more than UK
Uh,
readers.
yeah,
Or just even
it's
just I think
interesting.
editors have their own vision as well. So I think the editor I ended up going with, she's amazing and she had like a real vision for certain things. So
Mm,
it is kind of small changes, but I mean the title's going to be different. It's called "It Wasn't Meant to Be Like This." Um,
okay.
so it's different. I think it'll have like a different cover, like a different vibe.
Yeah.
Quite interesting to see what happens with it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's amazing.
Mm.
But thank you very much for coming on. I
No,
really,
thank
really
you. It was
appreciate
great
it.
to chat with you.
No, 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 it was amazing. It felt very easy and it flowed very,
Mm,
very nicely.
yeah.
But obviously, that comes from your fantastic book. To be fair, it made so many great points of conversation to talk about. But
Mm.
like I said, I thank you very much for coming on, um, and sitting with me and being very patient. And yeah, no, this was amazing.
Great. Thank
So
you so
thank you very much. It's been an amazing episode.
much.
Thanks for listening to the Paper Trails podcast. If you like this episode, please leave a review, comment, like, and subscribe.
and be sure to follow us on all our socials.
Keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. See you at work.